Welcome everybody to our Welcome everybody to our meeting. I'm going to call the meeting to order. This meeting is being held in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act and is open to the media and public. Notices were duly posted and the meeting was advertised in Hunter County Democrat, the Courier News. Formal action may be taken. Can we get a roll call vote?
Mrs. Cassidy.
Here.
Ms. Fury.
Here.
Mr. Lopes.
Here.
Mrs. Menser.
Here.
Mrs. Bagorski.
Here.
Mrs. Radden.
Here.
Mrs. Ryan.
Here.
Mrs. Pinto. Mr. Rizzo.
Here.
One is absent.
Okay. Please stand for the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for coming out and braving the cold this evening for our board meeting, especially in person, so thank you all for being here. Tonight, I have the great honor of celebrating the Board of Education, the incredible journey of one of our students, a young man who has truly inspired us with his courage, his determination, and his resilience. When I first met Jesse Gold, he was one of the leads in the play Nanny Poppins at White House School. I would have never known that he faced challenges that many of us might struggle to imagine. He battled OCD, which he described as his worry monster, a constant companion that made everyday activities feel ultimately impossible. Things like going to school, eating in the lunchroom, or riding in a car were monumental hurdles for him. But with the support of his loving family, his dedicated team at the Child Mind Institute, and the incredible staff here at the Reddington Schools, Jesse began a journey of transformation. Through hard work, patience, and bravery, he learned how to quiet his worry monster. He tackled one fear at a time, and in doing so, he didn't just meet his goals, he shattered them. Today, Jesse has gone from striving to simply go to school or eat in the lunchroom to setting ambitious and fearless goals like skydiving and meeting Bruno Mars. One of his goals was even to be in that play, Nanny Poppins, where I first met him as Bert. Jesse, your journey reminds us of the power of perseverance and the importance of facing our challenges head on. You've shown us that with the right support and a strong belief in yourself, even the biggest obstacles can be overcome. On behalf of the school community, we are so proud of you. You have proven that courage doesn't ever mean being afraid. It actually means pushing forward, even when you are. You're a shining example to us all, and we cannot wait to see what you accomplish next at Hollenbrook. Congratulations, and I want to invite you up to come to the podium and say a few words if you would like, and I have something for you. Come on.
Thank you, Dr. Hart. This past year was really hard for me, and it took a lot of work to get where I am today. Things are going better now, but I'm so grateful for the teachers, staff, and classmates who are understanding and supportive when things were hard. I hope all kids going through a hard time are lucky enough to get the help they need and to have the courage to do hard things. I know I will always be willing to lend a helping hand to anyone who needs it.
Thank you, Jesse. On behalf of the Board of Education, this is for you. I want to thank you for your courage and your perseverance.
Thank you.
There you go. You're welcome. Here, this is yours. Would you? Yes, of course. Jesse, do you want a picture?
Dad, you want to get in it too?
1, 2, 3. Oh, so handsome. That's like,
Congratulations, Jesse. Thanks for coming. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here too, Jesse. I know you've got the support of Hollenbrook teachers, and this is really your school counselor, which is great to see. So thank you. Thank you for
What I
coming.
need to say about the next thing coming up on the agenda. So.
Well, thank you for coming. You're welcome to stay. Thank you for coming. Thank you all. I appreciate recognizing Jesse tonight. He's also been recognized at the Hollenbrook School. I think Dr. Moss did something for him. One of the great Bobcat Awards was provided to Jesse, but he really has made some tremendous strides here at school and outside of school as well. So it's important to recognize our students. Now we'll move on to talk about enrollment and the Reddington Township housing developments. I'll start with this slide first because, as you can see, this has been an ongoing conversation since February 9th, 2021. So we're in our 4th year of talking about enrollment in housing. But the other thing you should know too is this conversation even started about a year prior to 2021 in committees in terms of planning for enrollment and adjusting our staffing to best meet the needs of our students. Because this has been a constant conversation, I'm not going to stop on every slide and go into a ton of detail, but I'll just give you some highlights. Feel free to stop me at any point during the presentation or even at the end. We could do some summary conversation if you'd like as well. So I'll first begin with I'll start with enrollment trends and some of our current enrollment. Matt, if you could just go to the next slide, I'll spend a moment there. This is our student enrollment that you can see. You can take that one. A couple things I want to point out in student enrollment. So obviously you can see from the 15-16 school year, we're good, to now there's been a decrease in our student enrollment overall. There's been some changes in student population in terms of full-day kindergarten, some specialized programs for special education students that we have in our district now. But you see the decrease in enrollment until about 2020, 2021. And that little bit larger of a dip was due to parents disenrolling students during that year we were on that hybrid schedule for COVID. And then you see a little bit of an increase when students re-enroll for the 21-22 school year post-COVID. Since then, we've been hovering around that 1,400 student line, not including preschool. And last year was the last year that we graduated 190 kids from 8th grade and brought in about 150 kids from kindergarten. So these enrollment decreases are a function of graduating classes being large and incoming classes being smaller than the graduating classes. Right now, if you look at our enrollment across the district, K through 8, you'll see anywhere between 140 and about 155, 160 children per grade level, which is good news because that represents some stability for us. We've leveled off. We're no longer graduating these enormous classes of almost 200 and bringing in classes about 50 less. We're fluctuating around plus or minus 15 students in each class across the district. So that line that you see, that's kind of stabilized since about 21, 22, should stay there, we project, for the next several years. We also want to talk a little bit tonight about Three Bridges and White House in particular. This is K-3 enrollment since the 2018-19 school year. And you can see that White House and Three Bridges were almost dead even in terms of enrollment in the 18-19 school year. And then you started to see where our conversation started in 1920 about redistricting, and then 2021, where we really started the redistricting project. You can see how much the enrollment between White House and Three Bridges diverged. And as we started redistricting, you can see how it started to converge a little bit as well. So the goal here was to do exactly what this line graph shows you, which is to try to keep the White House and Three Bridges school enrollment comparable. Is it perfect? No. But if you could imagine those two lines continuing to go in divergent directions, that is what would have happened if we didn't start to look at redistricting certain neighborhoods in the town. Our school configuration, really briefly, this is from our November enrollment report. Three Bridges school enrollment, 294, White House 331. Grades 4-8 Hollenbrook at 311, and RMS is 463. This is the second year that the middle school has fallen just under 500 students. You see that our preschool providers, we now are partnering with 4 preschools. We have a total of 14 classrooms, some in district, but we have several out of district, 4 at White House Prep, 2 at Stanton Learning Center, 3 at Berry Patch, and 2 at Global Pioneer. So that's just a quick overview of our district. Now the housing developments that we've been monitoring, there's 4 since about the 18-19 school year that we've been monitoring as they are completed. The first one is the Willows at White House Station. This is the Nelson Street development. It was completed in 2020. Currently, we have 29 students enrolled pre-K through 8 and 25 students K through 8 from this development. This is a 72-unit affordable housing development. The Ridge at Reddington was completed in 2023, toward the end of 2023. This is a total of 254 units, 25% affordable, 75% market rate. What's interesting about this housing development, we'll talk about projections in a moment, is it looks very different than the Willows. The Willows is 72 units. It looks more townhouse-like construction, whereas the Ridge at Reddington are taller buildings, 3 levels, more condo-like construction with a total of 254 units. And what's interesting is both developments bring in about the same amount of students, slightly more from the Ridge at Reddington. We had anticipated 2 years ago that it would have been a lot more students just because of the number of units, because it's 254 units. However, the lower anticipated enrollment is probably due to the fact that there's very limited 3-bedroom units in this development. The more 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units you have in a housing development, the less likely there's a family with children living there. Nevertheless, we do have 33 students pre-K through 8 and 28 students K through 8. These 2 developments are really important because here's what's coming. Camelot is 192 units, so it looks a lot like the Ridge at Reddington. It's again up in the off of Route 22. It's up in the White House area of our township. It's 25% affordable, just like the Ridge, 75% market rate, and you see 10 3-bedroom units in the affordable, 25% affordable. The site plan has been approved. There is some work to be done. There's sewer capacity that the township still has to work on. The access road to the development has to be there and utilities have to be run. Estimated, and I'll emphasize the word estimated, completion is 2026, which is about a year away. Could it potentially impact enrollment next year with some movements? Potentially. I would say maybe unlikely, but we have to keep this in our mind as we're planning our staffing for next year, because as these developments start to open and folks move in, we have to be prepared. Similarly, the Diaz property is down in Three Bridges off of Route 202. So this property doesn't look like Camelot or the Ridge. This property actually looks a lot more like the Willows at White House Station. So this is going to be 80 total units, 23 bedroom units out of this complex, which means probably anywhere between 25 and 30 additional district-wide students from this property if we want to compare it to the Willows at White House Station, right? We're looking at, this was 72 units with 18 3-beds. This one we project to be 23 bed units. And this will be in Three Bridges. The developer has been identified. There is site plan approval, estimated completion, in talking to township officials, 2027, maybe late 2026, but really we're looking at the 2027 school year. So these housing developments really have had some level of impact on our enrollment. Remember, we have about 190 students that have been graduating, we've been bringing in about 150 in kindergarten classes, but I think this reduction in enrollment has been slightly offset by the students that have been coming to the district from the new housing complexes. So looking at the enrollment impact, I won't, trust me, I won't bore you with the details of the Rutgers formula and all of the report and the white paper that they had, but basically we used the Rutgers formula. We looked to try to get, when we had no housing developments, we didn't even have the Willows back in the 18-19 school year, we used that to try to estimate how many students we were going to receive. The problem with the Rutgers formula was it was designed for K-12 districts, and we're a K-8 district. So it wasn't exactly accurate in terms of how many students we were going to be seeing in an enrollment increase from the housing, but we were able to try to get about an estimate. So I think the second to last bullets where I talk about how the Rutgers formula estimated about 48 students K-12. We saw 28 K-8, which was about 58% of what the Rutgers formula estimated. I would say the good news is, though, I don't think we need the Rutgers formula anymore. And I think we're at the point where now we have two housing developments that have been built, and we have students living there that are enrolled in our district, and that's the Willows and the Ridge. And I think those developments actually give us a much better projection of what we can expect from the Camelot property and the Diaz property. So if we were to use the same type of ratio, right, the Willows right now has 25 students K-8, the Ridge has 28 students K-8. If we were to take that same ratio and apply it to the Camelot property, we're looking at potentially 19 additional students, and the Diaz property and potentially 28 more students. And these are all estimates. What we tend to see is when we have full district enrollment, if we want to predict K-3 enrollment, because we have two K-3 buildings, White House and Three Bridges, 3 out of the 4 developments are on the White House side of town, and 1 is on the Three Bridges side of town. So we want to get a feel for what's going to happen to those 2 buildings with the new developments. The interesting thing, the trend that at least I've been seeing over the course of the several years of monitoring enrollment is it's about 50% impact the K-3 buildings and the other 50% impact the grades 4 through 8 buildings. The math just seems to work that way. It's not perfect. I mean, we fluctuate anywhere between 45 and probably 60%, but if you take actual district enrollment, when you look at actual K-3 enrollment, it's about half of what the actual district enrollment is, 25 to 12, 28 to 16. So if we're looking at 19 students at Camelot, maybe 10 will be at White House, 28 students at the Diaz property, maybe 14 at Three Bridges. Now, we don't have any longitudinal data, really. The Willows is the one that we have the most longitudinal data, and it's only a couple of years old, but we'll have to continue to monitor to see how many students live in the housing developments as they're built. So we planned several years ago, knowing that 3 out of the 4 developments were located in the northern portion of the town and go to White House School. Only 1 was in Three Bridges. We knew we had to balance enrollment between the 2 schools. After discussion in primarily personnel and finance committee several years ago, we looked at several options, and we opted to do this slow, deliberate transition of students from White House to Three Bridges. The goal being not to disrupt students' education, but to take new students who moved into Reddington or new kindergarten enrollees in a specific neighborhood and have those students attend Three Bridges School as opposed to White House School. And this has been our 5-year plan. So it's been a slow rollout. We're in the 24-25 school year. We did sort of a soft rollout in year 1. We gave parents the option. The second year, it was all entering kindergarten students and any newly enrolled students in a certain development in the township. And then the second year, we just continued with new enrollees, kindergarten every year. So it's been a 5-year phased-in approach. And we've been monitoring it for 5 years. We published a list of the street names, we have a map, but this is actually the better map, and thank you, Matt. Matt's here tonight. This is his handiwork. I'll give him credit for this. The map, this is a overlay of Google Map. Blue highlight is the Three Bridges side of town, and the red highlight is the White House side of town. And in the middle where you see the blue, there's like a little bit of, I guess I'm describing it as a little carved out hump right here. This is really the area that's been redistricted right here, these street names, right there. But what the beauty of this map is, this is on our website. We're in the midst of registration. Matt and my secretary Doreen know very well. Parents are asking a lot of questions about our new online registration process. Parents can go right onto this map, use that search feature, type in their address, and it will put ping a dot right on that blue and red map of exactly where their house is located. So parents are able to know exactly where their children will be attending kindergarten, which is a great search feature, a great interactive map. And I remember, I think we talked in personnel, Carol, and I remember having a conversation about making something very easily accessible to families so they know exactly where their children will attend school. And this has been a fantastic feature and great map. And we thank Matt for his handiwork. So the implementation of the 5-year program, we're in year 4, 24-25. So this is what happened in September. Kindergarten enrollment only. White House School saw 76 students enroll and Three Bridges 71. There were 12 total kindergarten students that lived in that little area, that little blue highlight, that were impacted. So what we were able to do, if you think about it this way, White House School, the 76 is minus the 12 that would have gone there without redistricting. And Three Bridges was plus the 12 students that are attending Three Bridges because of redistricting. If you think about if you added those 12 back into White House School and what would have happened if you deducted them from Three Bridges School, again, you would see an inequity. And then there was one new student in grade 1 who registered, who went to Three Bridges School instead of White House, which is a total of 13 students who were redistricted in September. So this is some long-term data. What I've provided here is every year since the 22-23 school year, how many students have been redistricted. This is a total of over 3 years of 49 students. 2 additional students are in there. They were mid-year move-ins. And you can see with redistricting, we balanced enrollment, K3, this is not including preschool, at 261 and 308. Had we not done it, it would have been 212, 357. So over 100 student difference if we hadn't created a little bit of balance here. So we continue to monitor enrollment from the Ridge. Matt knows, it's funny that he's here tonight because not every 2 months, I want to say every 60 days or so, we look at enrollment from the Ridge. On occasion, I have him run other enrollment reports for me as well to monitor our redistricting plans. Here's enrollment historically for 2 years at the Ridge. I'm anticipating that we'll see a continued fluctuation of between 30 and 40 additional students from the Ridge. And I'll just mention, White House and Three Bridges have a historical enrollment that's higher than what it is now. So there is a little bit, I'm not saying just a little bit of room to grow into these housing developments as students enroll. I will mention though, it's just a little bit of room because 10, 15 years ago, we did not have full day kindergarten. We didn't have additional preschool classes. And there were a lot of special programs like our autism program, LLD programs, ERI special ed programs that did not exist in the district that do require classroom space. So because of our full day kindergarten and our special programs, they've taken up classroom space. So while we do have some room to grow, it is limited. Balancing enrollment between the 2 schools was a really great thing that we did because White House and Three Bridges, like I said, have a little bit of room, but not a ton of room to grow, mainly because of full day kindergarten and some special programs. Yeah.
I noticed in the financial reports that there was a maximum capacity value for each of schools.
Mhm.
From what you're saying, is that's not still a relevant number?
I don't know if it's, I don't know, Jason, if you have the answer, if it's still a relevant number or if it's based off of some old data, so.
Yeah, I mean, it had like 10 years of data.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't sure if it was kind of current value.
Yeah, we're currently redoing our long-range facilities plan, and that will drive, when we submit that to the state, the new numbers that we'd see as a maximum capacity. But it's a functionality of square footage of the classrooms, as well as the functionality of the space. So the numbers can be swayed based on our usage of the space. But we do have room to grow if we need to. Our enrollment used to be over 2,000 in the district.
Good question. And grades 4 through 8, right? We really haven't talked much about grades 4 through 8 because students are enrolling in grades 4 through 8 as well. And there's room to grow at the middle school and at Hollenbrook as well. Because we did have, as Jason said, around 2,000 students several years ago. And these things do mean different things, maybe not as many special programs, maybe some shared resource rooms among teachers, maybe art on a cart, for example, those sorts of things could be impacted if we were to see enrollment numbers of Hollenbrook in the 430 range and RMS over 700 again. But there is some room to grow. We've really utilized the space in the buildings. We've spread out over the past several years. We can condense and consolidate a little bit, so there is a little bit of room to grow. I don't know if we can get back up that high, considering the special programming that we have, but we have to really evaluate that pretty carefully. So a couple of concluding thoughts. The biggest things over the past several years that I've learned and I convey to the personnel and finance committees of the board is how comparable out of the 4 properties, how 2 of the properties are mirror images of one another and the other 2 properties are mirror images. And I think what's important about that is we need to use our baseline data that we have with the 2 properties that have been fully developed. We now have our accepting students from those developments to drive our decision making when it comes to the other 2 properties as well. So drawing those comparisons in the future should be better as we start to see the developments come to fruition and we accept enrollment. The other thing that we're going to see this year after we're done accepting registrations is to what degree is preschool informing what kindergarten is going to look like next year? Do we have all of our preschoolers, all of our 4-year-olds basically identified right now? And are we going to maybe accept 3, 4, 5 more kids next year, or is it going to be 15? Is it 30? So I think having a good feel of how many preschoolers we have that are 4 turning 5 into next year when we do registration over the next month is going to help us understand how well we can prepare for our kindergarten classes in the future, right? We use 4th grade enrollment now to project what staffing we need for 5th grade for next year. We can do the same thing with preschool and kindergarten. So those are the 2 big takeaways as well. The reason I talked to you about this as well in January is because we are about waist deep in the budget process, Jason and I with the administration. We're going to be having lengthy conversations with the personnel committee and the finance committee of the board about projecting staffing in the budget for next year. I think having an understanding of what the overall picture of the district enrollment looks like. We'll talk a little bit about special programming at the next board meeting as well, for the board to best understand what's driving our decisions when it comes to student enrollment and the impact that will inform our budget planning. But with that, what questions might you have?
I have another one around your anticipating number of students coming in, but I'm assuming we also look at the impact of the tax burden and how the increase in the tax revenue that we will get as a result of these units coming in and the people moving in. So how do we balance that with the number of 30 students and 50 units? Like, is there a calculation of that?
So there's no calculation that I've taken into consideration. The developments that I'm mentioning here are pilot programs. And pilot is a type of program that's called payment in lieu of taxes, where Jason, I'll turn it over to you in a second to explain the finances, but basically what it is I don't want to call it a one-time, but it's a flat rate almost payment that is provided from the developer to the township in terms of the payment that comes from the housing developments. It's not tax revenue, it's a payment revenue that's in lieu of taxes. I don't know how much the revenue is. We've started having these conversations with the township, but the developments do not generate tax revenue. They're not agreeable for this. Jason, please.
Yeah, so in essence, when the township enters into an agreement with the developer for payment in lieu of taxes, which is called pilot, the remaining township residents continue to share the burden of the tax without the additional people moving into those residents. So our taxes that we raise still come from the same group of people and properties without coming from the new developments if a pilot program is entered into like that. So the money goes to the township and a very small portion goes to the county. If there's a new residence that's built without a pilot, that would increase the amount of residents that get taxed, which would lower the proportion share that everyone would have. And the big thing that happened a few years ago was the reassessment, which shifted the tax burden from corporate to residents, which saw resident bills go up and corporate and business go down. So that was over legal fights that occurred with the residents and businesses.
Sorry, it's just, does the township then pay the school district a portion of that pilot income?
Not at this time. There have been agreements made between townships and the school district, but there's no law mechanism that requires it. A lot of time pilots are entered into that they're not done always for monetary purposes. They're also done for infrastructure and other improvements that the town may want to see in that development. So it may be redeveloping roads, containing water so there's no flooding. They may want other things to come out of the development that the developer will do in lieu of paying taxes.
Other questions from the board?
Have we figured out what the kind of student cap is before it becomes unsustainable to have this continued growth, knowing that we're not getting any additional tax dollars? Are we anywhere near that, or do we have a lot of room here? Because at a certain point, the cost per student is going to potentially exceed the revenue that we're getting.
We haven't done those calculations, but I think as we begin to discuss the budget, I think it would be something that the board will have to discuss what the impact of increased student enrollment without necessarily tax revenue, plus the increase of just general costs, right? Life in general out there costs a lot more than a 2% tax levy cap. And I think that in our budget discussions, just today, Jason and I were meeting, we're wrestling with what we're going to talk about in finance and propose to you to solve those gaps. There's a gap, right? We can raise taxes up to 2%. Salaries are going up north of 3%. Health benefits increases have been going up 5, 6, 7%. CPI is higher than 2% and 3%. You know, life is expensive, and we have to figure out how we balance that as an administration and as a board. But we should what we'll do is we'll look into what where the unsustainable nature might be in terms of student enrollment if it continues like that. But I don't have it right now. Anything else? Mr. Rizzo, that concludes my superintendent's report.
So, thank you very much. Okay, so next item on the agenda is the open public forum, limited to any items that are on the agenda. So, if anyone wants to speak to any item that is on the agenda? Anyone online? Okay then. For correspondence, we received one correspondence in regards to virtual school days. Next we can go to board action, the approval of the administrative reports. Can I get a motion and then a second to adopt 1.01 and 1.02?
Stephen?
Motion, second?
Second.
Second. Okay, any discussion? Okay, Mr. Bonner?
Mrs. Cassidy.
I'm going to approve, yes, 101, but I'm going to abstain from 102 since I wasn't privy to it.
Mrs. Fiore.
Yes.
Mr. Lopes.
Yes.
Ms. Menzer.
Yes.
Mrs. Pogorski.
Yes.
Mrs. Rad.
The same, 101 I approve and 102 abstain.
Ms. Ryan.
Yes.
Mr. Rizzo.
Yes.
Passes.
Okay. Next item is the approval of the minutes from the January 7th meeting. Can I get a motion and a second?
Motion,
Motion.
Christina?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Okay.
Mrs. Cassidy.
Yes.
Mrs. Fiore.
Yes.
Mr. Lopes.
Yes.
Ms. Menzer.
Abstain?
Mrs. Pogorski.
Yes.
Ms. Rad.
Yes.
Ms. Ryan.
Yes.
Mr. Rizzo.
Yes.
Passes.
Okay. So now we'll go to committee reports. The first one is finance and facilities. We met on December 17th. So I'm going to have a motion to adopt my numbers 3.01 to 3.09, and as well as a second.
I'll make a motion, Christina?
Second.
All right. And then I know we have the committee report from the meeting. I think just Justina, you.
Yeah, so we have two committee reports. I'll read the older one first. Okay, so the committee met on Friday, December 13th at 8:30 a.m. The first thing we discussed was the 23-24 audit results. Audits are completed twice per year, and BKC CPAs presented audit results to the Finance Committee. No findings resulted in audit recommendations were noted, which is a favorable outcome for the district and result of diligence and hard work by the administration. Key takeaways are as follows. Increases in both revenue and expense changes were driven by preschool expansion. Reserves were decreased due to utilization for construction and renovations and other upgrades, such as first responder radio updates, etc. Salaries and benefits comprise 80% of expenses as expected, and this is consistent year over year. Lastly, a 15 to 20% increase in the cost of employee benefits is noted, driven by increased utilization of employee benefits and changes in the way health benefit costs are determined. Chapter 44. The next thing we discussed was the New Jersey Department of Agriculture cafeteria audit results. Audit results were reviewed with no finding or adjustments recommended, which is a favorable outcome for the district. We then discussed the 24-25 capital projects. The RMS main office nurse suite updates are near completion, and the renovated spaces are expected to be utilized in January. First responder radio updates are complete and functional, and the IT switch access points work is on track. TB preschool bathroom grants, the state initiative to fund select preschool facilities across New Jersey has resulted in Reddington's TBS school receiving a grant in the amount of $208,000 towards a $521,000 bathroom renovation. The project will be scheduled at a future date and will likely not occur in summer 2025. We then discussed the referendum, expiring debt. Next steps for the referendum were reviewed, which includes whether to pursue single or multiple non-contingent questions and the development of project lists and projected budget impact. We also discussed the board committee handbook. The draft board committee handbook was reviewed, and the finance committee was asked to review and provide input into the content. The handbook will be used to help onboard new board members. Electric bus, school bus update. A representative from the local fire department joined the finance committee meeting to provide their perspective on electric vehicles and answer committee questions.
We then reviewed the bill list, and expenses are as expected with the exception of the electric school bus and capital projects, which are large dollar values. We then met on January 17th at 8:30 a.m. We welcomed David and Paulo to our committee. We reviewed our goals, referendum, safety, and security were discussed. We then further discussed the 24-25 capital projects. Don Race, our facilities manager, provided the committee with an update on our capital projects. The nurses suite and main office projects are wrapping up and the staff is already moving in. He shared photos with us and everything looks really nice. Mr. Race then reviewed the first responder radio project that started over the summer to enhance the radio signals inside all 4 buildings. All 4 buildings received antennas and boosters and they are working very well. Lastly, we received an update on the IT switch and access point project. There are internal equipment enhancements being made throughout the year. We then discussed the referendum expiring debt. Mr. Bowen provided an overview to bring the new committee members up to date on the referendum. The goal of this part of the meeting was to review the potential project list compiled from input from all stakeholders and prioritize it. He explained that the board will need to vote on the referendum in February for a September or November ballot. The timeline is tight, but adjustments can be made, and we have until December 2026 to pass the referendum and still be okay from a tax levy perspective. He then introduced Tony Solomon, our bond counsel. Tony introduced himself and explained that his role is to make sure everything is properly authorized and that they will handle the legal aspects of issuing the bonds once it passes. Next, Kevin and Rita Santambrino introduced themselves and explained their role to date in regards to the walkthroughs and how they reached the projected cost for the projects, which are all inclusive of escalation, contingency, and professional fees. One board member asked a question regarding the start date of the projects and how that could possibly impact the pricing. The architect explained that the list can be modified if start dates change and further explained that the longer we wait to start the projects, the more expensive the project will be. They went on to explain that we are in good shape in regards to interest rates and timeline. Board members also expressed the need to have more information on the projects listed in order to better understand why certain projects are needed and properly prioritize the list. Mr. Bowen stated he will put together a referendum handbook with more details for us and include photos as well. We will also have an opportunity to tour the buildings and see the needs for projects in person. He will also indicate which projects will qualify for the debt service aid benefit from the state. The committee then reviewed the project list for each of the 4 schools. Some example of the projects on the list are backup generators, playground replacements, PA and mass notification system replacement, roof replacements, pavement improvements, HVAC systems, window and door replacements, broadcast studio, and updates to the media centers. The committee members have been tasked with categorizing the items on the list as priority level 1 or 2 and moving others down to 3 to 5. This will allow us to see which projects we should include in the referendum and which projects we can accomplish in other creative ways using reserves and grants, etc. We also learned that based on the financial advisor's report, the debt service aid should cover the interest cost. Dr. Hart shared that we can also have a second board meeting in February if we feel we need a few more weeks to review the projects and do the building walkthroughs and still be able to keep with our September or November timeline. The recommended schedule of next steps for the board and finance committee are as follows. By January 24th, Dr. Hart and Mr. Bowen will provide a referendum handbook with rationale for all projects to the finance committee. Week of February 10th, board members will have the opportunity to tour all 4 buildings. This is open to all interested Board of Ed members. Week of February 17th, the Finance Committee will meet to finalize the project list. February 25th, at a special Board of Ed meeting to present the referendum projects and vote to move forward with the referendum. Bill list is as normal. Finance agenda items, preschool ROG grant acceptance, semi-waiver, corrective action plan, accept audit results. Next email, we are in the planning stages of the next email of the next meeting.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I have a question. For the prioritization list for the referendum, is that decided at the finance committee meeting or is that a decision with the whole board?
We will take a first pass at it, but the whole board will get a chance to look at it. And that's what Jason and Dr. Hart are preparing, a list of all the projects.
Just, the walkthrough that we're doing, is that the same, would that be the board tours portion, or is that going to be scheduled separately?
So, since we're talking about the timeline, I'll let the full board know that in the finance committee, we talked about two specific things that you should all be aware of that will involve the full board. Working backwards, our end date in mind is to add a special board meeting on February 25th. If everything is going well, we'll add that board meeting for one purpose and one purpose only, which would be to have an agenda item regarding moving forward with the referendum, with the projects, as well as the timeline and date when the vote would be out to the public. So working backwards from that, in order to get there, Jason and I are preparing a document to be sent not only to the finance committee, but to the full board. The document will include lists of projects, preliminary prioritization, and that preliminary prioritization has come from our architect and Jason and I and Don Race, our facilities manager, in terms of what the district really needs and what capital projects do we really need. And that'll be a preliminary prioritization that we'll provide to you hopefully by the end of the week, at least via email or early next week. From there, the board tours, Beth, that you mentioned, the full board will be invited to tour the buildings like we have in the past. Remember, we've done board tours looking at program and education and everything like that, but these tours will focus really on giving you an inside look at boilers and paving and the real fun stuff of education, right? And fire alarm systems and wiring and those sorts of things that are prioritized in the referendum so you can have a better feel, with the goal being that the full board give input to the members of the finance committee and the members of the finance committee finalize everything for that February 25th meeting. So input will be sought from the full board to the finance committee to, really pare down the project list and then ultimately bring back to the full board on February 25th. We have not set up those tours yet though, but that's the goal. And I think I would recommend, I should say, that the board tours really focus on those capital projects. I know we want to see kids and educational programming and everything like that. I know that the board really wants to see them, but at this point, I think if we just focus on those things, it'll take us some time to walk through the buildings and have the principals and Don and Jason and I show you some of the things that we're thinking in terms of capital projects. And if we can mix in a couple of classrooms to visit and things like that, we will. Does that sound all right to everybody? Does that answer your questions too? Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Can we get a roll call?
Mrs. Cassidy,
Yes.
Mrs. Fury,
Yes.
Mr. Lopes,
Yes.
Mrs. Spencer,
Yes.
Ms. Bogorski,
Yes.
Ms. Rad,
Yes.
Ms. Ryan,
Yes.
Mr. Rizzo.
Yes.
Passes.
Okay, next is the EdTech Committee report. We're going to motion items 4.01 to 4.08. Can I get a motion in a second?
I'll second. I'm sorry.
Okay, cool. Okay, so the committee report, Beth.
Yeah, the Ed Tech Committee met on January 16th. The first item we discussed were the board goals. Dr. Hart briefly mentioned that the academic achievement and safety are the two board goals that continue to be prioritized in Ed Tech. The committee will review periodic updates on the progress of these goals. It was also mentioned that the district is seeing an increase in chronic absenteeism in some populations, which falls under academic achievement goal. This is something the committee will monitor and discuss in future meetings. The next item we discussed was a prevention resources grade 1 lesson. Mr. Tumolo proposed adding one 40-minute lesson for the first grade SEL program from March of this school year, which would be taught by educators from Hunterdon Prevention Resources. Counselors and teachers approached Mr. Tumolo with the need to teach first graders about acceptance and diversity. Kindergarten has the Kelso's Choice program, second grade has Avidum, and third grade has the CAP program. There is no cost for this. The next item we discussed were the curriculum initiatives and the budget priorities for 25-26.
First up was SEL. Mr. Tumolo is looking into a pilot for a program called Robin for grades 6 to 8. This would be in 25-26. Robin is an individualized SEL program that supports student mental health and social emotional development by connecting students with lessons tailored to their specific needs. Next, humanities, Dr. Brown gave us a report. She reported on the 4 different handwriting pilots that are taking place this year in grades K, 1, and 3. The district is participating in a Penn State study on these different handwriting programs, and researchers will be sharing those results with the district to help in selecting the best program to purchase. Dr. Brown also discussed a transition to new library media software. This would be district-wide. The software is called MacInvision. This is for 25-26. The program has the ability to track more than just library materials. It could also track sports uniforms, instruments, devices, and any other loaned items. MacInvision has better student usability than Destiny, which is a software the district is currently using. It connects with Genesis, and it is cheaper to purchase. In terms of parent notification for library materials, MacInvision does not have a way to search for potentially sensitive topics or to email parents when a student checks out a book. But as Dr. Brown was researching the different software options, she noted that none of the software were able to do that. Parents will have the ability, as they do now, to log into their child's account to see what books they've taken out of the library. There is no change to what parents currently do, which is to contact the media specialist to limit the kinds of materials their child is able to access. Once the new software is implemented, a Genesis blast will be sent to parents with instructions on how to log in and reminders about library protocols. Next, we heard from Ms. Pouch. She reported, this is for math, science, and health. She reported that Amplify Science has been fully implemented in grades 6 through 8 this year. Amplify Science is now being piloted in grades 4 to 5. And since teachers are reporting very good results, and the last update to textbooks was over 10 years ago, this is included in the budget for 25-26. For math, Ms. Pouch mentioned that the pilot for EdGems grades 6 through 8 is also going very well. Teachers have reported that although the standards and content are the same from previous years, the way that EdGems presents the information is a huge improvement over Big Ideas, which is the program the district currently uses. For health, Ms. Pouch recommends purchasing Teen Health for grades 6 through 8. This is the program the district used prior to the Great Body Shop. Teen Health's lessons are better suited to the new middle school schedule. There are no changes in content. The sexual health units are available to purchase separately, but the district will decline those and continue to use the teacher-created materials aligned to the standards. Next, we had an update in special ed. Ms. Beagle reported on the protocols for dyslexia screening. iReady diagnostics are administered 3 times a year and are the universal screener that the district uses for general education students. iReady is recognized by the state as a first-tier screener to identify students who then need a more in-depth one-on-one screener. The district then uses several one-on-one screeners based on the student's needs, but will be investing in a new dyslexia-specific paper pencil screener for next year. Teachers have been reviewing the new state dyslexia handbook and distilling that information down to share with colleagues. K through 3 teachers attend an annual webinar on dyslexia screening and teaching strategies. Next, we talked about the ESY program. Ms. Beagle announced the program dates will be July 1st through 31st for the self-contained programs and July 1st through 24th for the supplemental reading program. Next, we discussed the strategic plan. Dr. Hart reported that since the district's 5-year strategic plan is complete, he will begin collecting data through surveys from parents, staff, and students through focus and parent groups. He plans to bring survey results to the board in March or April with recommendations for budget items for strategic planning going forward. Next, we talked about the board committee handbook. This has officially been reviewed in every committee now. The last item was summer enrichment. Mrs. Cryle updated the committee on summer enrichment offerings for grades K through 6. Ms. Ogden will be the coordinator again this year. The classes will change week to week, so students could attend several weeks without overlapping content. New this year is a 30-minute early drop-off, which was suggested by parents last summer. The course offerings will be sent out after board approval. We had the regular agenda items, and then we scheduled our next meeting for February 21st at 8:30.
Thank you, Beth. Any comments, discussion? Okay, roll call.
Ms. Cassidy,
Yes.
Ms. Fiore,
Yes.
Mr. Lopes,
Yes.
Ms. Metzer,
Yes.
Ms. Boborski,
Yes.
Ms. Ryan,
Yes.
Ms. Ryan,
Yes.
Mr. Rizzo.
Yes.
Passes.
Okay, the next agenda, committee reports, personnel. Can I get a motion and a second to adopt 5.01 to 5.07?
Motion, Justina.
Second. Okay. I believe there's no committee report for meeting tomorrow, so nothing to read there. So any discussion? Okay, roll call vote.
Ms. Cassidy,
Yes.
Ms. Fiore,
Yes.
Mr. Lopes,
Yes.
Ms. Metzer,
Yes.
Ms. Boborski,
Yes.
Ms. Ryan,
Yes.
Ms. Ryan,
Yes.
Mr. Rizzo.
Yes.
Passes.
Okay, the next committee report is for communication. Once again, the meeting has not happened yet, so most likely will not be a committee report. Can we have a motion to adopt 6.01 and 6.02 and a second?
Justina.
Okay. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Okay,
I sent a message to Dr. Hart and Ms. Pinto, because I apologize, I wasn't here at the first reading of policy 8505. And I just had an issue with the wording. The first sentence in this policy is the Board of Education recognizes child and adolescent obesity has become a major health concern in the United States. And then the policy goes on entirely to talk about good nutrition and physical activity. And that's the focus of it, not really obesity. And I was having an issue with the fact that there's many causes of obesity that are not addressed by the policy. And it just seemed to be, I'm thinking of my fifth grade writing teacher back here who would say that targeting and making improvements on obesity might be a supporting argument. That might be later in your policy, and you could say that this is one of the benefits of improved nutrition and increased physical activity, but it's not the subject of the policy. And it seemed like it was unnecessarily exclusive, like it was targeted at our obese student population, as opposed to being applicable to everyone who would benefit from good nutrition and increased activity. So it was an odd statement and it felt out of place. So my recommendation after some back and forth with Ms. Pinto and Dr. Hart was I would like to move that sentence down to, goodness, the numbering in this policy was very hard to follow. Section 4A4A7. There's a section called additional wellness policy goals. And it just seemed like it would fit better there to say that, we don't limit the impact, the options for the school to just what's in policy and do more, that this aligns with Sustainable Jersey goals, and as well, it can have the added benefit of addressing this epidemic of obesity. So that's my recommendation. I don't know if that's an appropriate approach. Do I make a motion?
was it discussed? Did you initiate an email? Did you respond back or?
Both Mr. Pinto and I responded back with the background and the rationale for why this is written the way it is, and as well as some information in the bylaw about how to go about making policy changes from, the board table. So if it's something, Pam has something she's putting forward to the board. If we consider it to be a non-substantive change of the policy, in other words, if the board is okay with the administration just going back and kind of making that first statement more general and more mission focused, the Board of Education supports the well-being of all students or something like that, and not so much about just the obesity epidemic and then moving the obesity clause somewhere else more appropriate. I believe we can still vote the policy in, and if you don't consider that to be a substantive change, I can just make the adjustment and send it to you, and then we can just adopt as is. Or we can go back to the full committee and just make sure they're okay with the wording and then bring it back for a first read. But that's only if we feel as if it's a substantive change. So I feel like the question in front of the board is that language swap something that you think still meets the mission of the policy, and can we just move forward with adoption as is with a charge to the administration to make the wording work and sound better? We can move forward. If you think that that is a substantive change, then we have to go back to policy and we'll just bring it back to the board.
So Pam, since you raised it, do you think it's substantive or do you think it's something?
I think it is not substantive. I think it's a minor organizational change of where that statement is. I really like this policy. It's got some really great statements. I love the improvements you made, particularly at the middle school. Recess for our tweens is a great idea. I just felt like it threw me off, and I apologize. I would have brought it up if I'd been sitting on the first reading. I didn't mean to bring it here, but I'm practicing.
You're on a policy committee, so
Yes,
going
I
forward,
have
you'll be able
opportunity.
to. I agree. I don't think it's substantive either, but that's just my personal opinion. Is that, any other thoughts on it?
And I will point out, the message from Mr. Pinto also said, she's like, yeah, the point of the policy is around wellness and well-being of our students. That is just one of the benefits. And so I said it just seemed more appropriate in a different location instead of being the very first thing to read. And I know our students don't usually go in and open up our policies, but I don't know, I might be a little sensitive to that one. Like, oh, okay, here's a policy just for me. And, you know, all of our students really can benefit from physical activity and good nutrition.
Okay. So, any other thoughts on that? Okay. So we will treat it as non-substantive. Dr. Hart, and I guess Ellen, you guys can go back and make the appropriate changes. Any other comments before we take a roll call vote? Mr. Bowman?
Ms. Cassidy?
Wait, can I
Okay,
interrupt?
so
I'm sorry.
what am I
Wait,
voting?
I just want to point out 6.02 because it's board member recognition month.
Not a voting
And we
consent.
just wanted to make sure that you all got your shout out for serving on the board because we want to recognize you this month. And I didn't mention it during my superintendent's report, but this is a newly added agenda item that we should have standing on every January agenda just to recognize the Board of Education. I'm sorry, but I just wanted to mention that before,
Very good.
just to point it out that it's something.
Yay!
You don't get claps all that often. Thank you.
Ms. Cassidy?
Yes.
Ms. Fiore?
Yes.
Mr. Lopes? Yes. Ms. Spencer?
Yes.
Ms. Zagorski?
Yes.
Ms. Rad?
Yes.
Ms. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Rizzo?
Yes.
Passes.
Okay, next item is unfinished business. We have board committees. So at the last meeting, we discussed how we were going to go about creating board committees, and the result was for each of the board members to get back to me with the first two choices of what they would like to be on, if they want to be a chair, and so on. So the process that we used was we took your feedback, decided which committees you want to be interested in, and we were able to actually meet your requirements. People, it's the first two that everyone requested, we actually were able to actually meet that. The other item that was important was selection of the chairs. So chairs run the committee and the agenda. And we wanted to continue with the leadership because the chairs are the extended leadership of the board. So I just want to mention who the chairs are. For personnel, we have Carolyn Podgorski. Ed Tech, Beth Fiore. Green, Beth Fiore again. Policy Communications, Ellen DePinto. Finance and Facilities, Michelle Menzer. And Negotiations, myself, David Rizzo. If you need to see the rest of the committee assignments, they're online, so you can go to our Board of Ed website and see them. So that is the committee. I don't know if there's assignments, any questions, concerns, thoughts on it? Okay, well, thank you everyone for stepping up, being chairs and going out to committees. The next one is new business from the board committee handbook. I have not been part of that, so maybe Dr. Hart, you want to discuss it?
Yeah, I'll just mention, Mr. Rizzo, that it's complete. Every committee has reviewed the handbook, so at this point, it's a document that is ready for publication. And it sounds, based off of your feedback, I'm hopeful that it will be a useful tool in onboarding new board members, particularly in the selection of which committees interest them. But it is complete, and it's something that we can use continuing on with new board member orientation.
Excellent. Okay, any comments, discussion on it?
I would like to see it, be pointing where to find it.
When I thought I shared it with the full board before the January reorg meeting.
Oh, okay, that's what that was, okay.
That's what that
Okay,
was.
I got it
Um,
then. Yes, I got it.
And I don't think anything has changed since that time, except now I'll just put on a fun, fancy cover and call it a handbook. And
It did look like notes, okay.
okay,
That's cool.
yep, that's it. That's the one. And I'll make sure I send out a final draft to the full board.
Any other comments?
I have new business whenever you're ready.
I'm sorry?
I have some new business
Okay.
to add if we're ready for that. You had appointed me to the Garden State Coalition of Schools as the representative from the board. There was a meeting last week that I attended, and Dr. Hart was also a participant in it. And would you like a report out from it? There apparently was an unusual setup where there were a panel of journalists who were asking questions of the attendees. And as a first-time board member, I really had no place answering any questions. But Dr. Hart, you were there, so you're welcome to chime in if I got anything wrong. So there was a series of questions that it ended up being two journalists, Brianna Kukic and Hannah Gross, were asking the panel of primarily superintendents and board members. Superintendents primarily answered. They asked, one, what are your AI policies to safeguard against misuse and not just cheating, but harassment, and what legislation from the state is available? And the general feeling was that we already have policies around cheating and harassment, regardless of whether or not it's AI, so they didn't see this as a unique situation. Question two, what type of cell phone policy would you like to see at the state? And again, there was this kind of feeling like, do we need legislation? We feel like we can handle this in our own districts without having undue restrictions. We want to engage the parents and community and make it correct for our district. The third question was the biggest challenge or obstacle this year. It was all about state funding, the formula, the budget, the 2% tax levy, the fact that I guess we get our funding is coming out 2 days later or something, you have to report back on it. So they were all agreeing on that. Teacher shortages, sick leave, staff attendance is plummeting, sub costs are going up. So those were some of the issues. They asked about the race for the governor and how it's impacting education topics. They also asked about what could you do your budgets now to offer some relief, and that was we need the ability to go over this 2% tax levy cap. We want special education costs to be fully funded. I said a lot of these legislative and formulary changes are very slow to enact and having a real impact for a long time. They said the formula that we use to calculate our tax benefit here is around the property value and income, but income is not actually taxed locally, so we were talking about how there's difficulty that we may have a lot of money, but it doesn't come into the school district. Okay, question 6. If the district funding formula is revamped, what changes can be made? They just want to see some more transparency in the range of what that range would be in advance, what state aid could look like for the year. It's not allowing you to plan adequately. The timeline is not really adequate. Question 7 was around negative student behavior, school avoidance, chronic absenteeism. It's been getting worse since COVID. Has that improved at all? We said overall, most of the districts felt like it has been getting better for the general population, but there are certain populations, I guess, as you said too, that are seeing some increased absentee concerns there. There was a lot of talk about providing mental health systems of care outside of the school, what programs are working, what have been failures. There was an agreement that kids need immediate access to that mental health support, and most districts are funding that themselves for private contracts. Question 8, potential changes to the immigration policy and how's that impacting your district? And there was a lot of reassurance that state law protects immigrants in this district, that it's not a question that the school is even aware of, you don't have access to that information, and that students have a right to privacy. And so no one can come up to the front door of the school, come collect a child or ask for any private information. Question 9, looking back 5 years ago, what would you have done differently when remote for COVID? And that was a tough one, but everybody said like they did what they could. We can't with a crystal ball look back, but they admitted that the district's at different states of readiness. It was good to have a plan in place in advance for what ultimately was a predictable event, and how can we better fund public health? I think it's a bigger question than just the school district. Question 10 was around the school in Montclair that had closed due to threats of school shootings and how our threat assessment protocols were working in the district. And they said really these threat assessment teams are raising community awareness to get ahead of the violence. And that they try to intervene before there's an issue. All right, there was an executive director's report. There's a lot in Dr. Hart had provided to us, a lot of links to these bills around formulas and funding coming through the New Jersey Senate and Assembly. There's a bill on indoor air quality studies in schools, bills on cell phone use in schools, the bill on required notifications to print newspapers versus online for the Board of Ed. There was the day you just mentioned. All right, so I don't know, anything else, Dr. Hart, as a first timer?
I would just say we'll coordinate when it goes. I can't go to all the meetings, but I was very quiet during the meeting because I found it a little odd that we were all on the record with 2 journalists in the meeting, and they were asking these questions, and I just sat and listened most of the meeting. But yeah, it was a different format. They're not all like that. Usually there's a guest speaker, or we talk about legislation, or maybe there's a legislator that joins us, but it was just a very different format. So but those were the questions that were asked. It was 2 journalists taking notes, and the chair of the meeting literally said everything is on the record unless you say it's not on the record. So I said nothing.
Okay. Do you have anything else, Pam? Okay, excellent. Anyone else? All right, so our next item is our next public session. This is open to the public. Anything on or off the agenda?
Hi, everybody. I'm Melissa Gildo. I'm fortunate to have many of your children. So I'm a teacher and I live here. And I have a new hat. I am the RTEA BOE liaison. So we wanted to welcome you and thank all of you for the good work that you do and important work that you do. And we look forward to working in partnership with you to enhance our students' learning. So welcome, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I do not see any questions online. Any of the other 2 people in the audience have them?
What'd you say?
I'm just curious if anyone else wants to come up. Yeah, okay. All right, so we'll close that out. Our next item is executive session. We're going to have a motion to adopt the following resolution. Resolved to adjourn to executive session in accordance with the Sunshine Law to discuss 2 HIVs and the superintendent's evaluation mid-year update for approximately 45 minutes, at which time the board expects to return to public session where action shall not be taken. The matter discussed will be made public if and when circumstances requiring confidentiality no longer exist. However, it is not presently known when such circumstances will exist. Can I get a motion in a second to go into executive session?
Second.
All right, got a second? Roll call.
Mrs. Cassidy,
Yes.
Ms. Fiore,
Yes.
Mr. Lopes,
Yes.
Ms. Mentor,
Yes.
Ms. Bogorski,
Yes.
Ms. Ryan,
Yes.
Ms. Ryan,
Yes.
Mr. Rizzo.
Yes.
Last.
Okay.
Good night, everybody. Stay warm out there. Thanks for coming.